Andaman and Nicobar, a cluster of scenically magnificent islands in the Bay of Bengal. A very famous tourist destination. But this is not a story of tourism. This is a wonderful saga of two young men. A tale of dreams, fearless determination, and abysmal bravery. It's the story of rowing about 1600 kilometers in a small wooden boat across the Bay of Bengal. Bay of Bengal, which is infamous for turbulence, unpredictability, and uncountable sharks. That is why it's a proud chapter in Indian maritime history. And I feel proud too that I was an integral part of this glorious journey, a feat never done before. I am Kanhoji Angre, a 20 feet long and 5 feet wide wooden boat named after a famous Maratha naval admiral. I was built by GRSE, short for Garden Reach Shipbuilders and Engineers. I was designed like the boat rowed by Captain Ridgway across the North Atlantic. Thanks to the valiant efforts of two young men, I have found a place in the museum of GRSE. The year was 1969. Two young men set out on this daring sea expedition. One was 25-year-old Lieutenant George Albert Duke from the Indian Navy. The other, Pinaki Chatterjee, was a 23-year-old research scholar from Calcutta University. They had been inspired by Sri Mihir Sen, the legendary swimmer and chairman of the Explorers Club of India. Mr. Sen had called for courageous young Indians to abreast the unknown. George Albert Duke was a natural choice. Dr. Pinaki Chatterjee was selected out of many volunteers through a series of interviews, psychological and medical tests. The 2 months training period was rigorous and grueling. Pinaki made 7 prior trips to sea on the pilot vessel, necessary for him to gain confidence and avoid seasickness. The rowing expedition was planned for the months of February and March 1969. 1st February was chosen as the launch date. I, Kanhoji Angre, was positioned at the man-of-war jetty, Hastings, Kolkata. The large flat-top pontoon was decorated magnificently, and the cheering crowds lined the banks of the river Hooghly. The patron-in-chief was the young Union Minister Pranab Mukherjee, who later became the President of India. The chief guests were the Honorable Union Minister Dr. Triguna Sen and Tenzing Norgay, the first man who conquered Mount Everest. There was a festive mood in the air, but for Pinaki's family it was a sad time. It was a tearful farewell. Duke had not informed his family, so there was only Captain Khanna and the other Navy staff to bid him farewell. Another journey which they were confident he would succeed in. Journalists Chiranjeev and Manoj Ghosh of the Anandabajar Putrika and Statesman, respectively, among other journalists, were travelling down the Hooghly in the port launch. The rowing expedition was well on its way. It was mid-afternoon on the 6th of February 1969 that I entered the Bay of Bengal. It was hot, but the heat was bearable. Duke and Pinaki rowed continuously, encouraged by Captain Ratan Das. They anchored me 17 nautical miles east of the pilot station. Ratan Das cautioned Duke and Pinaki on the unpredictability of the Bay of Bengal. Soon it was time to bid farewell to Captain Ratan Das. It was an emotional parting. He left them with a tight hug each. It was the last ship that I was going to see in many days to come. As the evening turned to night, the tide was turning the ebb. The anchor was hauled in. The two of them rowed in silence, keeping their thoughts to themselves. It was a slow, rhythmic 1-2 stroke to their thigh and leg muscles. Every sinew in the body was strained. They would soon get used to the rowing and not feel the stretch and pain anymore. They had not made much progress since the 6th of February. By the morning of the 9th, their calculated position indicated that they had barely reached a position of 50 nautical miles south-southeast of the pilot station. It was an extremely frustrating situation. Frustration led Duke to write in his diary on the 9th of February 1969. Today after lunch, I carved Komal's name on the aft of the boat so I can watch it as we row. Inspiration. Pinaki also kept thinking of his mother, sister and fiancée Sheuli. Duke and Pinaki struggled with the tides. It was not encouraging at all. The 9 p.m. radio news on the night of 12th of February announced that there was no trace of me, the Kanhojiangre, and the press made it a sensational news. Duke, Pinaki missing, almost declaring all of us dead. This was followed by melancholic songs of Tagore. Again on the 13th night, there was similar news. On the 14th of February, an aerial balloon was used to send a message that was picked up by 2 Air Force aircrafts who passed it on. Mihir Sen had been under tremendous pressure to bring the 2 young men back to Kolkata. Duke and Pinaki refused to abandon the expedition, especially as they had crossed the most difficult phase, the biggest hurdle. Captain Suarez, master of the pilot vessel, was a seasoned sailor and knew these waters well. He advised them to row dead east and the ocean current would take them southeast as required. Perfect advice. They rowed on, happy that the news of their safety had reached their families. 17th of February, the sea around me was like an aquatic zoo with different types of colorful fish. They saw a fierce fight between a shark and a large fish. They poured black ink around me to keep the hungry sharks away. They had made good progress and decided to take a dip in the sea. Pinaki shouted and Duke swam back into the boat just in time to see a huge shark not too far away. Pinaki had spotted it earlier, a narrow escape. On the afternoon of the 17th, the wind was veering to the south-southwest. Strangely, it indicated that there was a serious change taking place in the weather pattern. It was a major change. Something was not normal. The sea swelled and waves got bigger. It was becoming difficult to steer me and keep my head into the wind. Duke and Pinaki tied themselves with lifelines to the life raft so that they would not get separated from the boat in case they were washed overboard. Sometimes they were at the crest with high waves around them, and sometimes they were at the trough with huge waves behind them. In one such event, they even saw a shark among the waves higher than me, just like a big fish in a glass tank. Daybreak on the 18th was more harrowing as Duke and Pinaki could see the boat being lifted by huge waves and sliding down the other side. The gradient was so steep that it felt that they would capsize on top of them. The night had been particularly tormenting. It was the roaring of the wind, breaking of the waves on top of the boat. It was also ominous and alarming. 2 things kept the 2 of them going as they rowed with ebbing strength and sanity. The first was the love they had for the people back home. The second was the news of millions of people across the country praying for them. On the 20th of February, early morning, the sea was calm, the sky was clear. This allowed Duke to get a good star sight position. They were now more than halfway to their destination. The weather at sea can be very fickle, for on the night of the 20th of February, once again the sea picked up. The waves got bigger, but the direction had changed substantially. It had suddenly veered back to northeast. It gusted strongly. Rowing in these conditions was impossible. Water surged into me. The wind howled and roared. By the morning of 6th of March, Duke's astronavigation of morning star sight positioned them about north-midwest of the Great Cocoa Island. Looking through the binoculars, Pinaki shouted out loud, "I see land, I see land." The Andaman Islands were only 30 miles away. In spite of their fever and flu-like conditions, Pinaki's sprained shoulder and Duke's pulled leg muscle, they rode on with renewed vigor. As Landfall Island came into view, the red and white lighthouse stood out like a grand beacon. They radioed their position, which was picked up and transmitted to Kolkata and to the Indian Navy. The lighthouse launch guided them through the last few meters of the coral reefs to the beach, Andaman at last. The national television crew were there to receive Duke and Pinaki, filming every step and move the duo made. It was a miracle they had reached the Andaman Islands. I, Kanhoji Angre, remained witness to their physical excitement, but within their hearts the enthrallment remained. I stand witness to the heroic feat of two young men who believed in never say die.